What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Country Central podcast. So we're hanging out today with Charles Wesley Godwin and Read Connolly right now. And y'all, I want you guys to just take a second and introduce yourselves and share what you're all about.
You first, Two Show.
You want to go first, Chuck?
It's all you, bud.
Okay. I'm Read Show Connolly. I play the steel guitar and the banjo for both Charles Wesley Godwin and Zach Bryan.
And I'm Charles, and I'm a singer-songwriter. Read's in my band, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, that's awesome stuff. So we want to start out right now and just kind of like get the whole story of where like the two of y'all came together and met for the first time. Because Charles, I've followed you for like quite some time now, and I remember when you were playing like just acoustic shows, and it was just you doing it by yourself. But like in the last couple of years, like you've got this band now, the Allegheny High, and you're jamming out together, and it's really, really cool to see. I mean, I got to catch y'all at a super small venue earlier this year, the Mercury in Tulsa, but I mean, now you're playing at Red Rocks and all kinds of crazy festivals and everything. So really just want to see like how all of this came together and how the two of you met.
Yeah. So it started back and you can kind of take anything that I misread on this, but in 2017, I went into Music Garden Studios in New Brighton, Pennsylvania, where my lead guitarist and also my producer, he owns a studio. It's called the Music Garden, and we started demoing out what would become Seneca. And when we made Seneca throughout, the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I used Joe, Nate, and Al.
Mm-hmm.
I think. And Eric did some backup. Eric did a couple like backup vocals on "Pour It On." So I met four.
And trumpet.
Yeah, and trumpet. So I met four of the guys making Seneca. After Seneca was released in 2019, started getting a career going. And, got booking and things like that, and I got called up to play Mountain Stage there in West Virginia. That's a big deal, and I wanted to do that with a band. So I already had those four guys, and then Al knew Reed just from the Pittsburgh music scene up there. So calls Reed in for our rehearsal. So Reed comes in. I meet Reed for the first time. I had Eric Haywood and a guy named John Ricard play the steel on Seneca. So Reed comes in. We're getting ready for Mountain Stage. We go play Mountain Stage. It goes great. And, we walk away from that gig. And in my head, I'm like, all right, when full band gigs come up, I'm going to use these guys. I really like those guys. So we had a couple full band gig opportunities in the summertime. Then in the fall, we had a couple venue headlining shows in Ohio, one in Columbus, one in Cleveland. And called up to Al and I were kind of talking about, what kind of live sound we wanted. And I love Bruce Springsteen, so I like the richness of the E Street. So a big part of that would be to add another piece, get some more flavors in there. So we brought in Max to play keys for those November 2019 shows. That went great. We had, 100 folks in Columbus and 130 in Cleveland. And it just kind of, it kind of felt like, we were getting our feet under us, and it was really lining up to be a great year going into 2020. My son was born in December, got back on tour in January. I did a European tour, and, I saw it on my calendar. We had a bunch of shows lined up for 2020. We were going to be opening for guys like Wade Bowen and like Randy Rogers and stuff like that down in Texas, playing some full band shows. And it really would have been a lot of growth there in 2020. But then the pandemic happened, kind of cut the legs out from under me. Didn't get to push Seneca like I'd hoped. And in the summertime, we went ahead and started making How the Mighty Fall, and made that over the pandemic. And then we finally got the opportunity to really get back on the road in July of 2021. So that's kind of how that happened. So we went, it was like a year and a half break, sort
Yeah, I
of
mean,
there with
yeah, I mean,
the
it's wild. I
pandemic.
think that's something we've seen a lot, Charles and Reed. Like during
Right.
the pandemic, everyone's life was
We
like
made the
shut
most
to
of
a
it, though.
halt. I know y'all probably had time just to obviously connect with your families more. Obviously, appreciate where you got them, but even to your point, you were able to develop a whole new album and then hit the ground running, like in a way where a bunch of fans are able to really take all the music in the interim, and then boom, like just it's wild to see the past 2 years. But Charles, you did mention like Bruce. You mentioned that you tour. Like I'm in Texas, and you mentioned touring with a lot of these really well known and established Texas artists. So I'm really curious from both of y'all, just how did y'all get into music? I know Charles, like I hear like so your stories is very interesting to me. How you're like you never really thought you'd be doing music, so that always intrigues me. So I'm curious about your story, and then Reed, of course, you can kind of maybe start off, Reed, how you even got into music. And I know you teach a lot, and I think that's something now that a lot of younger fans really appreciate the richness of your live show, appreciate all of the classic instrumentation going on. And I feel like that's always been something that people could value, but more than ever, they're loving it. So I'm just curious to hear like your upbringing in music, Reed, and Charles, really a little bit of your story, how you got into music and how you knew it was the right thing for you moving forward.
Yeah, Ben, that's a great question. It's always interesting hearing everyone's different stories, especially in the music world, because I mean, in my case, I grew up in a musical household. My dad plays guitar. We played a lot of music in the house, not country, but listened to a lot of different kinds of music growing up. So I've been playing guitar since I was 10. Um, and my ear has always gravitated towards the steel guitar. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't listening to country growing up, but I was hearing it in, you know, like the California rock bands, like the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, Crosby, Stills, Jackson Brown, stuff like that. So it always really spoke to me. So I just, on a whim, bought a steel guitar when I was like 19. I started teaching myself. And within a year, I started playing out in Pittsburgh. But I never thought I would do this professionally. It's funny because in Charles' band, the pedigree is very high. I mean, we have one of our bass player has a master's degree in music. A couple of the guys have gone to school for music, and they're just very smart, very talented, and they knew from an early age this is what they wanted to do professionally. And for me, it was the opposite. I thought it was always going to be a hobby. Like I'm obsessed with music, but I just thought, yeah, I'm going to have a 9 to 5, and every other moment of the day I'm going to spend thinking about music. It wasn't until I turned 30 that, with a little bit of encouragement from friends and my wife, that I was like, I think I should try to make a go of this. And the first piece of the puzzle was my wife made me a website. That's what she does for a living. She's a digital communications manager, so she builds a lot of websites. And I kind of believe in the universe giving you signs. One of the first messages I got on my website was Al from our band asking me to come rehearse for that Mountain Stage show that Charles mentioned. So, I see that as fate. I don't know. And then, like Charles was saying, we had all these hopes and ambitions, and then COVID happened. So I still had my 9 to 5 through all of that. And it wasn't until last summer that Charles was like, I'm going to start, booking a full band tour. And I had to make that leap of faith to quit my job and take a chance on this. And so I got all my ducks in a row, paid off my car, saved up as much money as I could, refinanced the house, and just really went for it at a very old age. But I'm so glad I did. It's been an amazing year, and we're having a blast. You just you got to take a chance on yourself. If anyone wants to take away from that lesson, take a chance on yourself.
That's such amazing stuff. No, and getting to see y'all out on tour and like such different venues. I was just mentioning like right before this podcast because, like I said, I caught y'all in this tiny little bar in Tulsa. It was very intimate, and Charles, for the type of music that you make, where it's very rich and storyteller driven, like to be so close to you as you were doing that was the coolest thing ever. But y'all are also playing like these massive festivals and Red Rocks and everything with Zach Bryan. And I really wanted to ask, like how that friendship kind of came together because y'all are a super tight knit group now. I was really curious about that.
Yeah.
It's a
So
family.
yeah, we've gotten along really well for I think a number of reasons. I know that Zach told me the way that he found out about my music was his friend Austin turned him on to my music last spring sometime, and he loved Seneca, and just became a fan of my stuff, and then reached out, and we were going to do a YouTube live session up in Port Townsend, Washington, last summer. And then right around the time where we were actually working our way up there on our first West Coast run last August, I think Zach got honorably discharged from the military to play music, and then he was moving back down to Oklahoma, so that fell through. But then we talked like a month later, and then he asked if I could go out on the road with him. And the first couple times he asked, about a particular date, I was already booked and committed and wasn't able to make it work. And then towards the end of last October, he asked, for us to come out and open for a handful of shows, and it worked out with the schedule. And we went out and played the first one with him in Raleigh. And, I've been doing this for 8 years now. It was 7 years there at that time last year. And I have a lot of experience. I played bars and restaurants and cafes and for years and years, just all by myself. And, uh, I've learned a lot with all that. So I understand when I'm walking into certain situations in this business, what my job is and what my role is, and being an opener for a tour. And your job as an opener is to go out there and try to get people up to a 10 for the headliner to go out. You gotta be happy to play your role, let your music speak for itself, and try to get people hyped up for the headliner. So every time that we step out on stage when we're opening for Zach or anybody, it's about the headliner. You play your music to the best of your ability. That's what's going to get folks to check you out. But the focus is on the headliner. So that's what we did. And I think that Zach liked that. That, a lot of times openers go out and they try to make it about themselves and try to, they're trying to grab as many people as they can over to to their cause and stuff like that. And sometimes, I know to me, it's a little cringy. So yeah, we did a good job, and then he just added us on to the rest of the tour after a couple of those dates. And, we just continued to do that. And then off stage, we're all kind of in the same age bracket. And just, I don't know, we just get along, all right. And over the course of months and now over a year now, we've just kind of become all real good friends.
And to your points, Charles, when you're saying that, hey, like when you connected with Zach and you're opening up for him, I mean, the fans can see it. I mean, I know you just love music at your core, but like that energy and that spirit, I mean, it kind of draws more people to just the style of music that you're making. Like seeing you on stage, like you're almost like you're at a rock show with a lot of your stage presence. And it's cool because it inspires people to, I feel like y'all's like style of music, it's cool. Like I like to compare, like someone actually brought this up to me where like people go, you're very storytelling driven. It's almost a cinematic experience. Like people at the show, they see you just like, headbanging and they take in all the instruments and then they just go off to another place. And obviously, y'all are talking about all these different influences, like, you know, Bruce Springsteen. I know you love the Abbott Brothers. Josh had mentioned like that was like your favorite band, and that was like a band I know in college for me really resonated. So I did just want to dig in a little more to like your upbringing into music, really. And I even heard that you really started playing guitar like in college, and that's always mind blowing to me. Like, I mean, I know like I'm not a professional guitarist, but I did just kind of cobble it together. So, what was it about when you're in college learning guitar? What was like the light bulb moment where you're like, hey, music, why not? Why not take a shot? To Reed's point, why not take a shot and go for it? What was that moment for you when you were in school?
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat as Reed with the whole music thing. I was 10 years later than him even, so I picked up a guitar just to have as a productive hobby in the evenings, because hunting and fishing has always been a huge hobby of mine. But you can't just do that unless you live right by the water. And it's hunting season is, for me, I love hunting whitetail and stuff. So that's just in the fall. So there's a lot of time of the year where like I can't do the two things that I really really enjoy doing as a hobby. So I wasn't playing sports anymore, and I just had to find some new things to get into. So I picked up a guitar. I wasn't particularly great at it, but I did enjoy it and stuck with it. And then like about a year later, could kind of sing some songs, like play some songs, string some chords together, started singing some songs. And then just from friends hearing me like practice or something, folks were telling me, you have a good voice, you have a really good voice. And I kind of accidentally fell into playing in front of people while I was on study abroad, and folks really took to it and got offered my first gig when I was in Estonia. Played my first show. I did 20 minutes for a fashion show, for a lingerie fashion show in Estonia. I made 150 euros, and it was the easiest money I've ever made in my life. I had a lawn business growing up as a teenager, worked at a golf course in college. So I just always made small money. And so, yeah, I realized I had a talent. It was my voice. I had a very unique thing. And it was I tried enough things in my life to know, to recognize talent, and to know that I didn't really. Yeah, I was very aware I didn't have much talent in anything I'd ever done in my life. I'd always kind of had to work hard to be any good at sports. I was like the corner three shooter when I played basketball as a kid, just because I'd worked so well and having a shot. But I couldn't jump very high. I couldn't run very fast. So I just never had much ability at anything. And when I did find my voice, I realized that I actually had talent, and I came back to the States, continued on there at West Virginia University, and started singing bluegrass music in college out at bars with my friends and making money, and just really fell in love with it and just kept going then after I graduated.
Man, that's amazing stuff. I was very curious. I mean, hearing Reed talk about like how his bread and butter was kind of like the old school rock and roll, like the Eagles and everything. And, you're an Avett Brothers guy. Like, I was very curious, like, in the last couple of years of y'all like playing together and, being in each other's orbit, so to speak, are there like records or artists or songs that you two like bond over together?
I think the whole band agrees, Reed, that we love Madison Cunningham, right?
That's that we tried. This was a discussion in the van one day. Is there one band that everyone agrees and loves? Because even Bruce Springsteen, I'm not gonna say who, but there was one person that's not
Yeah,
a big fan. You're right. Madison Cunningham was the winner.
yeah.
Interesting. That's a new one on me. I don't know about you, Ben,
No,
but definitely gonna have
absolutely.
to check that one out.
Yeah, she's like,
Um,
what do you say, Reed?
so
Like indie rock, indie rock.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, she has a really, really interesting voice, really interesting use of melody. I think she's definitely more adventurous, but also like kind of groovy. She's really cool guitar style.
right on, right
the
on.
It's fun.
the
Yeah.
the musical preferences in my band are really funny. Reed's a country guy, even though you didn't start out like country guy. Reed's a big time country guy. Nate is a big time country guy.
Well, when I
The
get
rabbit
into
hole.
something, I go all the way in on it. So once I started learning steel guitar,
Yeah.
I just ran with both feet.
Now Al is like
I ran backwards first.
Al's
And
like,
then
oh, sorry.
when I met my wife, she's a fan of 90s country. And then I ran forwards with her. So
Yeah.
Dang.
now,
Wow.
now I don't know where I am, but
I mean, you're a big time country guy for sure. Like you got all the chops and the taste and the
yeah.
tone and all that. But then like Al, my guitarist, my producer, he's a huge like 80s guy, 80s rock, like butt rock, like the big
Oh
hair.
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
No,
Like
let's
he
go.
loves that
Come
shit.
on.
And so it's so like
No.
it's and I hate that.
Yet
I
it
hate
somehow
that
shows
stuff.
itself in your live
And then
show, which is kind of wild to me.
and then
All those influences, they all kind of somehow
and
showcase
then
themselves.
Max likes
I was gonna say,
like super like kind of weird rock. Is that right, Reed? He doesn't like it unless it's weird. That's like Max's taste. Am I right there?
Yeah, I mean, I think he really likes kind of like left of the dial kind of songwriting, and he appreciates very adventurous songwriting. I mean, like he loves Joni Mitchell, Steely Dan. He likes a lot of rap too. He's all over the board.
Yeah. Then Eric loves like the Foo Fighters, so like that kind of like I don't know what do you say like
Mhm.
'90s
yup,
influenced rock is like what Eric loves, and then Joe loves like that
kind of
purely
grungy.
like instrumental like jazz stuff, and then whatever that one is where like everybody's in the
Fusion.
yeah, fusion. Yeah, so Joe like loves that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And obviously, like,
Mhm.
So it's a weird mix of everybody's personal taste in the band, you know. But then everybody, I am what I am, and my songs are the way they are. But everybody's like good enough musicians to be able to to fill their role and like play their instrument in service of my songs, even though they probably wouldn't listen to it on their own time.
But we all learned from each other. I mean, Charles, I didn't know any of Chris Knight's music before I met you, and then just from all the late night drives and long hauls in the van, you played so much Chris Knight, and just talking to you about the influence he's had on your songwriting. And I mean, now it's our warm up music in the locker room. Essentially, it's what we jam to get ready to go on stage.
That's right.
no, I love hearing the Chris Knight influence because I mean, Charles Seneca was so almost autobiographical of like your upbringing, like your region where you come from, and you even said like how the mighty fall. You wanted obviously just to tell stories that could be about anybody, but still very cinematic in nature. So it's always cool to see the growth. Yet, I mean, songwriting, the storytelling's at the core of what you do, alongside I think like the instrumentation, man, like that's something I love. Read how you talked about your upbringing because for me, like I didn't grow up in a country household at all, but I always say growing up in school, like I was around a lot of classical music, so I developed an appreciation for like strings and orchestral, arrangements and whatnot. So I think that's something that
Mm.
fans maybe they don't know they have an ear for, but man, what y'all do live, it can resonate and connect with every kind of person across the country. So I would say, obviously, with your upcoming music, I mean, How the Mighty Fall has been huge to like take on the road. What are you looking to say moving forward with some of the new music that maybe y'all been working out while on the road? Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Uh, I know for my stuff, it's been family oriented. So about my children and my relationship with my wife. So this next album will be about that. It'll be about family, past and present, and future.
No, that's interesting. That's very cool. Something kind of recent that I wanted to touch on really quick. At Country Central, we're big fans of Nicholas Jamerson, and
Mm.
we saw y'all put out a little collab together with Peace Mountain. I was really curious, like how that one kind of came about, how y'all linked up.
Man, back I was playing with my old band Union Sound Treaty, and we opened for Sunday Best in Charleston, West Virginia in 2017. And
Oh,
you
dang,
know,
y'all went way
yeah,
back.
yeah, and again, I see my old band. It was four equal parts, so things I wasn't able to dictate so much, but I know with my own mindset. I went into it the same way that I did when we had the opportunity to open for Zach. You know, and we did a good job. And I think, Nick really enjoyed our set. So we played an after party at a place called the Boulevard Tavern that night, and Nick and Chris, I think, came out to it. It was just right across the river there from the amphitheater in Charleston, and got to talk to Nick late, that night. And I think he gave me his number, and we just kind of agreed to stay in touch. And then it was about a year later. I kind of went out on my own under my own name, and I booked. I think Sunday Best then had taken a break in 2018, and Nick was playing by himself. And I booked a weekend of shows for us in West Virginia where I would open for him. And so we did a little string of shows together and got along great. And, then we just kind of kept doing our thing and staying in touch over the next couple years. Run into each other, at a festival here or this kind of, and then it's kind of weird now that, we had, Nick opened for us in January. And yeah, we just kind of become friends just kind of along the way. And, we're both fathers. So we find, a lot in common with that and talking about, different methods and things like that we do to try to stay connected to our families and make this work the best that we can while having to play music out on the road for a living. And yeah, he just hit me up earlier this year and asked if I wanted to sing on that song with him. I think he wrote it when he was in West Virginia. I think he played at the Fiddle one night in Thomas, West Virginia. And so, yeah, he asked me to sing on it, being a West Virginian, and I was happy to do it. So I think I got in there at the beginning of September and knocked that out for him. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think he did a great job.
I mean, fans have really taken to that, Charles, that song already, just being released this past week. And then obviously you have your collab with Zach, Jamie, and that's been a huge song's gone over. I know y'all play Revival 2 live, and it's like one of the pivotal moments of the set. I mean, I'm definitely just curious, what do y'all think it is about this moment in time? Like y'all's music, I mentioned before, resonates so well, I think now, but what is it? What's happening right now that you think has allowed y'all to have this platform and to have people really appreciate it? I mean, you call it what you want, Appalachia, call it, folk, whatever. What is it about this time in music, just in 2022, where y'all don't even have to be on a commercial on the radio, and you're just having some of the biggest crowds ever? It's just such a special thing, and I'm curious to know y'all's opinion on what it is behind this movement that we're all experiencing right now.
I mean, Reed, you correct me if if you think I'm missing it here, but I think it's the authenticity of the songwriting. There's a lot of things in this world that have kind of become more and more shallow. Our communities have become more disconnected with modern day society and the technology and all that, the social media and things. Politics have become more divided, and everybody's hearing that the I don't know. The United States has always been working through issues, but I guess the economic glory days are behind us. That's kind of what everybody's hearing, that the American industry and the days of us being number one in the world as far as production and medium household income and all that stuff. Like, people are kind of saying that it's the end of an empire. This is the fall of Rome. And I think the songwriting and the authenticity, the heart in it, the singular voice that oftentimes my songs have, Zach's songs have, Nick's songs have. I think that connects with people, their emotions, their heart. It gives them goosebumps, makes their hair stand up on their arms, and just makes them feel something, makes them feel connected. And I think that's why it's really connecting with folks. My crowd, my crowd's pretty wide ranging. It's from like 20 to 70. it's kind of an odd thing. When you go to one of my shows, it's got a bunch of college kids, middle-aged folks, and then there's some elderly folks. Zach's crowd, it's like this entire like younger generation that is taken to it, and it's amazing to see, because I know like when I was those kids' age, when I was in high school and stuff, me and my friends, we were not listening to like heartfelt stuff like that. We were listening to a bunch of bullshit that really didn't mean a whole lot of anything, you know. So it's amazing that younger generation's taken to it, and that's my best guess as to why folks are connecting with it.
Yeah, I think that music is cyclical, like a lot of culture is. That's why it's interesting to me to study and understand the history of music and culture, because trends come back later on. So, like, for example, right now, the 90s is kind of back in vogue in terms of like fashion and apparel and look. I think that you can also, expand that to include music and the way music was being distributed, and also the authenticity factor that was a big, big part of music in the 90s. I think storytelling is popular again. I think we've just come out of an era where we valued escapism over storytelling. Um, you could say a lot about how the music in 2010 sounded, especially country, but I don't think it was storytelling. I think it was representing what was happening in the culture. It was a reflection of the times. And now we're entering a new era. And usually that era starts around like the third year of the decade. So 2023 is going to be really interesting, I think, for music.
That's brilliant to point out. I mean, I just truly think something about the pandemic and being, at least for some of our lifetimes, like the most like, you know, insane time we've had to live through. And music was a refuge for a lot of folks, I mean, and I think to your point, we're just diving into authentic storytelling. Like people they really want to know that, hey, this is where, like, what y'all were feeling at the time. And I think during the pandemic, a lot of us, doesn't matter where our backgrounds are from, our jobs, what we've listened to, like we all kind of wanted to find something that did bring us together, even if we weren't intentionally trying to get together. I think music had that one common ground where we could just kind of, really rely upon it. And I think a lot of your lyrics, Charles, that helped. And I know for myself, just a lot of the instrumentation in your projects, it's the cinematic nature of it. It's like I wasn't waste my time watching movies. I also kind of immersed myself in y'all's music, Zach's music, and just getting back to, hey, like, what is it all about? What's the whole point of it? It's not to make a quick buck, really. It's to have an experience. And I think that's why people flock to y'all's live shows. And it's just something really special for me to see. I think in country, whatever you want to call it, I always say, like, this is the best time to be a country fan, because you can listen to every style, but also like have an experience at every show. And I just think it's a beautiful thing that the small platform that we have here, where we can appeal to y'all's fans, and then at the same time, I talk about some of the more mainstream stuff. But y'all are kind of the mainstream now. People just generally enjoy a little bit of everything, so it's a beautiful time to be a fan. I'm just so excited for what y'all have going on, because it's gonna keep getting bigger. So I'm just always curious to hear what y'all have in store. But yeah, just super grateful that y'all are just at the forefront of what's going on right now. It's a special time, and I think fans, every time they come back from one of y'all shows, they're just like, this is like the Woodstock of the 2020s, if you will. So it's kind of incredible to see. So y'all keep it up, man. I'm a big fan of what y'all do.
Well, I appreciate Country Central for the way you're covering country with this really wide lens. Like you're definitely covering what's in the mainstream, what's on the radio, but you're also giving just as much of a platform to the independent world, and what we're doing and what Zach's doing. And I think today with streaming, the listening landscape is totally democratized. Like we're not just we don't just listen to one genre. We're kind of in a genreless world, and that's why, like, with Charles and Zach, it's like, why do we need to spend all the energy to put a genre on it? We're just making good music. We're making music from the heart, and that's what people are responding to. They're not responding to it's this kind of country or it's this kind of folk, or that's not what's really important. That's what sells records, but that's not what drives fandom. And so I really appreciate that you guys are, really bolstering that aspect of being a fan of country music.
No, dude. I mean, that's honestly my favorite part about it. And we talk about that like quite a bit on this podcast, how, we've got this just wide open like lens, and on Spotify, and now we'll find like Zach Bryan stuff on the same playlist as like any of the folks like in Nashville and stuff like that. To wrapping up a little bit, but I do want to mention during the pandemic, like I'd probably been a fan of you, Charles, for about 8 months at that point. I got into Seneca in summer of 2019, and it was like my record for the longest time. And it was interesting because I'd never like seen any videos of you live or you doing anything live. And during the pandemic, you were doing those Facebook live streams, and I thought that was just like the coolest thing. And to Ben's point about like escapism and what it was like then, and what when we were really like craving some storytelling, just quality stuff like that. I mean, I think Seneca really kind of like it echoed this like cool nostalgia just for like the best days of America. Like you were talking about a second ago, like, we're in the pandemic, and I'm thinking like this is not the world we used to know. And Seneca just had this beautiful like retrospective look at, like I said, the best of American culture, and it's just something that y'all do so well, and I am always grateful. But y'all, we want to thank you so much for hanging out with us as always. Check out Charles's How the Mighty Fall. Check out Charles and Read playing those dates this December as well. Check out Zach, just all the good music out there. And, you can hit us up at countrycentral.com. Check out the camo Country Central hat at countrycentralshop.com. And, as always, we will catch you again real soon with another episode.